Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode for two reasons. Number one, this is the final episode of the 2023 calendar year, wrapping up the fifth year of this podcast. We are approaching 550 episodes now of this podcast, closing in on 700 ratings and reviews on iTunes, and nearing the 725,000 total listen mark for this podcast. And you guys all know my goal. By the end of 2024, I want to hit that million listen mark. And obviously, with everything that's been going on, how this podcast has been growing, I know that we can accomplish that together. So I do appreciate your support. And the second thing is, a lot of you know, my wife talks about this often when we do our he said, she said episodes. And, she always classifies me as a storyteller. She's more analytical. I like to kind of paint a picture for people. That's, always been part of who I am, whether when I was in the fitness industry or now obviously in the online consulting, coaching, and, services business that my wife and I run together. And storytelling is a very, very powerful thing. And I actually have an author with us today who wrote the book Telling Your Story. And why this is going to be so impactful for anyone that's listening or watching this is you have to understand when you are looking to convey a message, you want to evoke emotion. You want to create a bridge between yourself and the listener or the watcher or the person that's scrolling through on social media. So instead of me talking about it, I'd rather hand the baton over to the person who wrote the book, Telling Your Story, Henry Wang. Henry, welcome to today's episode.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is really terrific.
Absolutely. So before we dive into obviously the book and everything that you're doing to help people obviously tell their story, let's rewind the tape before we move forward. And this is, I always like kind of going back in time before we actually talk about the present into the future. If you had a tape rewinder in front of you, of your life, of your business journey, and you press that button to rewind it and you press stop at what you feel was the pivotal moment for you or the catalytic moment for you that kind of thrusted you not only into what you're doing now, but where you're going in the future, what was that moment for you?
I think it was probably back in 2016. I bought and sold different ad agencies. I've run businesses. I was at a certain point where my former partner actually passed away, and it did a little bit of a reset in terms of my emotional and spiritual journey. At that point, I decided that I really want to be on my own, away from other encumbrances of agencies that I would work with, and I want to really steer a business the way I wanted to. And I opened the doors with nothing more than simply the idea of that I want to work with organizations and people who want to have a positive impact on the world. That in itself, I thought, in part, I was thinking it would be a little bit of a retirement firm that I could just sort of go off in the sunset, do a little bit of work here or there, but it actually ended up blossoming even more. I found more people gravitated to me just by that very purpose that I set forth with the company itself. So that to me was a little bit of a turning point. So while I want to take on less, I'm at a point where I'm taking on a little bit too much. So that in itself, I think, has really shaped a lot of the latter part of my business career at this point in the way I take on business and look at different enterprises.
So not to get, mortal, so to speak, but losing someone close to you, whether it's a family member, loved one, business partner, which is obviously what you experienced in the loss of your business partner, I would say 10,000-foot view, looking back at that experience, what would you say was the most impactful lesson learned from what you went through and dealing with that obviously emotional event, and obviously that life and business changing event, that lesson you kind of took with you into everything that you're doing today?
I think prior to the show, Scott, you and I talked about how important health was. And I went through an interesting instance myself where I had my full health assessed. And it was part and parcel due to everything happening at that time. And what came back was an amazing, I was pleasantly surprised at the amazing bill of health that I was given. And that to me did the same thing as if someone said to me, "Oh, you only have 5 years left to live." Because what it said to me, I have a lot of runway left and I have a lot perhaps to offer. And so that in many ways reinvigorated me and got me thinking about how I could have an impact on other people's lives. And, unfortunately, COVID hit a couple of years ago, as you recall, and that gave me the instance in which I had a little bit more free time. So every Saturday morning, I began writing my methodology. So everything I've written in this book about shaping your story and really developing your personal brand is built on everything I've learned over my 25 plus years in the advertising business. So a lot of the storytelling techniques and things that I talk about really go to the same sort of methodology you find, or the same sort of structure you find in TV commercials or creating an ad. How do you catch someone's attention? How do you get them to the body copy? How do you get them to the call to action? So same sort of thought, but through it was really driven by this desire to make good use of my time that I have, which is hopefully a lot, to be able to help other people and impact their business and impact their own personal brand along the way.
No, I love that. And it really, a couple things that I kind of wanted to touch on. The first thing is that you've sold multiple companies, which I think is awesome in itself. Being in the advertising world, and again, when I started in business, I had a traditional brick and mortar, and this is back in the late 90s, so there was no online. You were still sending out postcards, you were still taking out billboards, and obviously you were along for that ride, and in the different ways and the means of advertising and getting yourself in front of more people. And I can humbly and honestly say that obviously with the use of social media, it's never been easier to get in front of more people now than it was back then. For you, being a part of the pre-internet to the now post-internet, what do you still see as the most challenging for small business owners, consultants and coaches like myself, from an advertising or visibility standpoint? What do you still see as a big hurdle that a lot of these individuals or companies still have to face?
I think it's really two parts. It's really how fractured our media has become. When I started in this business, it was somewhat easy. You could create a TV ad, you do a campaign, you might run a billboard, you might run a magazine ad, and then you go to the bar and sort of drink and celebrate. These days, for the same amount of budget, or even far less for many business owners, you have to do so much more, because there are just many media platforms that are available to people that did not exist before. Social media is amongst one of them. The whole world of Google ads, the whole world of social media ads, direct mail, email, all of that. How do you decide what to put your money towards or what to focus on? And that's often the biggest challenge, and often the main question I get from clients or people looking to enter into this fray.
It's interesting because, to your point, if someone wanted to run a Facebook ad, they could get it set up in 2 seconds and they could have $1 a day budget. Same thing with Instagram or YouTube or even, Google AdWords, and it could become overwhelming. And, again, I totally resonate with what you said, because, we used to take out ads in local newspapers and magazines, and it was set it and forget it. Like, and you were just so excited that it was going to be showing up there, because, you knew how many different places of business that magazine was going to be dropped off at, with all the patrons that would come into there, you kind of knew how many people were going to see your stuff. And I think that was, really powerful. And to your point, it's never been easier as far as doing advertising, but getting the right eyeballs on your information can be very, very overwhelming to people.
Yeah,
Now,
you're exactly right, Scott, because it is fairly easy with small budgets for people to enter into it. The big challenge, of course, is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other similar businesses, not just in your local area, but globally, that are competing for the same sort of attention. So if you're trying to appear, let's say, on a Google search, you are competing hopefully at a local level where the smaller pool is made available to you, rather than many other businesses that you're having to compete with. So if I was a business owner today, I'd be scratching my head and a little bit concerned about, even though it doesn't cost me that much, am I still hitting the right people? Am I still targeting the people? And that's where the strategic thinking comes into play. And often what we do with our clients is to try to not be everything to everybody, and to focus really more on the core customer base that you're hoping to attract.
absolutely. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about storytelling, because obviously this definitely dates back to your time in advertising, because whether it's a magazine ad, whether it's a TV ad, whether it's a newspaper ad, a postcard, there has to be a story being told in that form of advertising. Like I said very early on, that evokes some sort of emotional connection between what is being advertised to the specific customer of obviously getting to that end result. So for someone that is unfamiliar with the art of storytelling, when it relates to obviously a business, not so much, reading a nursery rhyme to your kids before bed, but in relation to business, and someone is really unclear of what it even really means to be a storyteller in business, that is, what's the best way to describe that to that person that is still unclear about it?
I think the key word is probably nutshell. And so many people forget how limited time your audience has to connect with you. A story is meant to get to the proposition as quick as you can, and think of it more as a media and a conduit by which you're trying to get that message across. So the best example I often see is you're at a networking event and people go, "Hey, great to meet you, Henry. Tell me a little bit about you. What's your story?" Suddenly the person may get into this long biography of how they started the business, their background, their childhood, the school and education. And before you know it, you've lost your audience. So the methodology I've often applied that comes from advertising is that really that short form that allows you to get to the heart of what you're all about. We call it key messaging. And if you look at an ad, a very simple, even print ad, you have a headline, you have a visual, you have a body copy, and a bit of a call to action at the end. And that's a perfect way to try to drive that structure in the way you tell the story. It's not quite that simplistic, because that all that gives you is a structure. You need to still figure out what your story is. But if from the outset you think of it purely as a very short 30-second commercial, or a short billboard, or an ad that in which you're trying to draw someone in, then you're further ahead than most people who tend to meander. That sort of focus allows you to pinpoint exactly what you want to say to people, and hopefully it resonates with the people you're trying to get across.
So what led you to writing the book, telling your story? Because again, I my wife was kind of the inspiration behind me writing my book. And she said, listen, if you want to impact more people and you want more people to know about, your skill set in LinkedIn and how you teach people how to use it, she goes, you need to write a book on it. So what was the backstory on how your book, telling your story, came about?
I think it was largely driven because of the ad agency world that I work in. So many brands and many clients can come to me, a company come to me, they have a set aside a marketing budget, and we could put that together and find the best use of it. I was also getting many professionals and many personalities, heads of companies who would come to me. There were certain people who could afford the fees that weren't quite as much as what I would charge a brand, but at the same time, if I'm just a up and coming manager, or someone looking to make my mark in the world of consulting, or even real estate as a realtor, or any of the professional services, those fees tended to shy people away. And I realized there was a lot of information I would love to tell people because this desire to help people isn't simply words, but I was looking for a way in which I could provide people perhaps the insight. So the book in itself became a little bit of a do-it-yourself guide to it. So if you want, you could bypass me certainly and just jump to the words on the page, and hopefully that'll help you through and guide you through the process of being able to figure out your story, figure out who you are, and be able to articulate in such a way and determine the media forms in which you can present it to people.
Yeah, and I would say my book is much the same. I pulled the curtain back on everything that I do on LinkedIn. And again, if people want to bypass me or my courses or my membership and they want to go directly to the book to kind of at a self-paced way learn themselves, they can do that. And that's what books are for. I also see books as entry-level ways for people to kind of get to know, like, and trust you, where people do want to kind of vet out and see, how reputable is this person? How much do they really know about storytelling or LinkedIn or business building? And once they get a sense of that and they understand, like, wow, this person is on par and aligned with how I feel about it, and I think they can definitely help me. Obviously, when you write a book, it ends up also being a lead magnet in the sense of an avenue and a way for people to connect with you. So sitting and staying with the book for a second, Nancy and I always talk about how important it is, if you want to really make yourself stand out as an expert in your space. Two of the best ways to do that is having a podcast, which you have, and having a book, which is what you have. And there's a lot of people that have that narrative running between the 6 inches between their ears of, who am I to write a book? I have nothing to say. Who's going to read it? No one's going to buy it. And we all know that's just a bunch of garbage, because there are plenty of people out there that would read, what it is that you have to say on those pages. If someone was to ask you, if I really want to be considered an expert in the space that I'm in the industry that I'm in, but I'm not sure if a book is the right thing I should do, what's your message to that person?
A few years ago, I began doing some keynotes around the whole idea of mentorship. And I realized in the number of people I've mentored over the years that it actually made me a better leader. It made me a better boss and a manager. So to those people, I would say start with the mentoring, because there's something powerful about being able to dissect what you know and sharing it with someone, because that in itself allows you to deconstruct your own techniques. Once you begin to understand that, then you have something of value to share with people. And that simple act of helping someone who's coming up in the career or similar business will tell you in itself how much you actually know.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things where we have a couple clients that are getting ready to release their books. One actually rather soon, on the 19th of December. So it came out about a week or so ago at the time of the release of this. And it's exciting when you actually have something like that come to fruition, because it's out there forever. And it's, for me, I update my book every 2 years. So I'm working on my third edition right now of my first book that I wrote about almost 5 years ago, 2018. And I revised it and released a second edition in 2022, and I have the third edition coming out in mid 2024. And it's, when you can really position yourself as that expert and that go-to person, where you're really just helping people and you're giving them an avenue or a means or a road to go down to achieve what it is they want to achieve, whether it's something in what you teach, I teach, or anybody else. It's a very positively empowering thing. So, Henry, as we wind down, if people are interested in your consulting, your coaching, what you do, how you help people, tell the audience a little bit about how you serve people, how you help people, and if they do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
I think a very simple pipeline is through my own website, henrywong.com. upstarts.co. It'll tell you about the book. It'll lead you to my consulting practice, which is a branding agency. These days, as I mentioned, I'm really looking for companies and people who are looking to have a very positive impact on the world, and love to connect with people on that line, because I think together we could do so much more than what's happening. We live somehow in a very divisive world right now, and it'd be great to use it for good rather than evil. In and itself, my book is there, and if people are interested, always happy to speak to people about it. There's hopefully some interesting insights that people can gather from it, and it's there through Amazon and other retailers, as you can find on my website.
Awesome. Well, we'll put the link obviously to your website there, where everyone can learn about you, your services, your book, and every other way obviously they can connect with you. So, Henry, final question before we sign off today: what does success truly mean to you?
I heard this the other day, and I think it's so applicable. It's really the positive impact that you can have with your family. So we do all of this. We work so hard. We put so many hours into our business to build it up. Hopefully, there are people there in your life to share it with, and I think that's what makes it all certainly worthwhile.
I love it. I could not agree more. Family, friends, all those things that we get to experience, or that's what success is. People talk about it's the amount of money in your bank account. Again, if you can't enjoy your life, money is not going to make any difference. And
yeah,
and,
absolutely. It will have, the money will happen, as you know. The rest is what are you going to do with it?
exactly. I could not agree more. Henry, thank you again for being here
Thank you.
today. I think the sharing that journey of what you did, going from, obviously the old school advertising world into the new school advertising world, but also the power and the importance of telling one story. I know this episode is going to resonate with so many people. So thank you again so much for being here today.
Scott, thank you.
Absolutely. So again, as a reminder, this is our closeout episode of the 2023 calendar year. Obviously, stay tuned next week. Obviously, there'll be new episodes for the 2024 year, our 5th year of this podcast. And obviously, we're still on the road to 1 million listens, and we are almost 75% of the way there. So again, I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. Wherever you're listening to and from, leave a rating and review. Also, let us know what you love most and what you would like to hear more of. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.